Yeah, there's some stragglers. If you guys have a question for David, approach the microphone in the center. Right. Don't be shy. He's not going to Herschel you.
Well, we don't know about that. Depends on the question. Yeah, happy to answer anything you want to know about the show.
So, in the comic, the governor is probably the most vile person imaginable. In the TV show, you made him into kind of a charming character in the beginning, and then you got to witness that slow descent into madness. Were you a fan of the comic or the novels before getting the role?
So I didn't know anything about the show in terms of the comics at all, but I knew the show because Andrew Lincoln is a great friend of mine, so I'd watched it with Andrew, and I really enjoyed it. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. I've been sold to me as like a zombie show, but when I watched it, I realized that it was a human show. It was about the humans and this threat that was coming at them. And I thought the qualities, because the first 2 seasons were Frank Darabont, and he'd done Shawshank and Green Mile and stuff like that. He was a really great director. So it felt like it was a really proper show. And then I went to LA and I was visiting a friend of mine in LA. And then I got wind that they were casting this character. And it's full of, it's always full of secrecy. They don't let you know what the character is or anything like that. But Andrew had told me it was a major character. So I went to Barnes & Noble and I got the book out and I just found the next major character, and that was the governor. So I skimmed through it and then went up for the role and got the role. And then I read the comics. But the things I really read were the novels I read by Jay Bazinga, which are The Road to Woodbury and The Rise of the Governor. And that origin story, they sort of brought in a bit of that at the beginning of season 3, which with me, but they really also brought a lot of it into the beginning of my story in season 4. So those books, if you haven't read them, I would strongly urge you, because they're great novels, and I really love them. And I love the fact that by that time the showrunner was Glenn Mazzara, and he brought those stories into the show. So I really love doing that.
With all of the spin-offs that have been announced, with the main show ending and with Tales of the Walking Dead, has there been any talk about possibly bringing you back to film like a live-action prequel?
Well, there's always talk. I mean, with all the actors, obviously we're sworn to secrecy, but there's always rumors about things because it's become quite a big universe now. There's lots of different characters. Also, their timelines are all over the place, so they do origin stories, they're now doing different territories, geographic territories. I think Daryl is going to Europe or something, I don't know, I've heard rumors about that. So, who knows? But there's always those tentative things where they check out your availability. And then you think, great, and then you never hear from them again. But I would love to do it. It was one of the happiest working times of my life. Great characters, really great actors, and also one of the best crews I've ever worked with. The crew are fantastic. You can understand, you can imagine the conditions we work in down there in Georgia. It's quite hot, it's quite brutal. And as actors, we're pampered. We sort of get our water and we get off to our air-conditioned trailer and stuff like that. But the crew are in that all the time, and they do long hours. They're away from their families, but they create a great show. So it was one of my favorite things and favorite experiences to have done.
You made it through season 3. You weren't so lucky in season 4.
Yeah.
Were you surprised to get the call for season 5?
I really was. Well, I was surprised to get the call for season 4. I signed up, and I was fully expecting to die in the end of season 3. I thought it was a 1-season deal for me. And how it works is that we don't know what's happening. So an episode will take 8 days to shoot it. And like 3 days before you finish that episode, you get the script for the next episode. So you read it in your lunch break. And I was always expecting to die. I always would get the script, I'd read it backwards to when the next see whether the governor had died in this episode. And he kept surviving, and I was thinking, wow, I wonder if they're going to leave me here, And then there was this whole rumor, there's lots of rumors on the show that I was going to stay. And I asked Glenn Mazzaro if that was what was happening. He said, that's what we're thinking about. So, yeah, I was expecting to die at the end of season 3. I was really surprised when I got that call to come back and do that very weird, trippy episode in season 5. That was great, though. I really loved it. I loved putting back on the costume and getting back into the governor. That was fantastic.
Young lady up here?
Is there a specific scene that comes to mind for all of the filming that has a great story to tell?
Yeah, obviously the scene for me, thank you for your question, the scene for me was cutting off Herschel's head. When I read that, I was so upset. Because, Scott, God bless him, he was a great friend of mine in real life. He was someone who I had admired and loved deeply. And I know he loved the show as well. And so when we both read that, the only saving grace was having killed Herschel, I then got killed myself. So it was quite soon. I didn't go on and live on for that long. But that was tough. And the day of Herschel's death had turned up, and all the crew had the sort of Herschel suspenders on. And there was a lot of tears that day. And then the next day when I got killed, after I beat up Rick Grimes, and he had to get Michonne to help him out, which whenever I meet Andy, I remind him of that fact. Scott and I went out. We went for a drink, and we went for a meal, and it was tough, because it's such a great show. It was tough to leave. But that was the scene that really sticks in my mind. And at my table, there's one of the photographs is me and Scott on that day. And it's a bittersweet thing to do, to sign that photograph, because, he was such a dear man to me. He taught me so much. I was such a huge fan of his before I entered the show. His work as an actor is something I'd always admired. And, it's that thing of meeting him in real life. I know some of you have met him in real life in the past as well. You couldn't meet a nicer guy. He was such a great man. So that's the scene for me that will always stick out.
What was your reaction to the bad lip reading scenes with him?
Oh, I love that. So I can't remember who it was, but someone said to me, have you seen this bad lip syncing sort of video? And I was watching it and I was thinking, okay, this is quite fun, And then there's the scene with me and Andy in the barn where we're having this negotiation, and it burst into song, and that was the thing, And then plug goes the chicken. Just loved it. I loved it, and that's how we do it on Broadway. I was a bit like, how did they know that that's what we did in the outtake? Yeah, so it was great fun. And people now get me to sign that as well. That's how we do it on Broadway. So I thought that was great fun. I watch it quite often now. People sort of bring it up to me. But yeah, there's some great stuff. And it's so well done. Whoever they got to do my voice is brilliant, but also just the lip syncing itself is perfect. So yeah, I thought that was brilliant. Hey, sir.
Are you going to be on the Talking Dead finale next week?
So I don't know. Well, let's see. I can't reveal anything about that at the moment. That's going to be a huge show, by the way. So yeah, let's see. But I'm sad to see the show go, but I know there's going to be lots of these spin-offs. I'm hoping some elements of Talking Dead will come up as well with the other shows. It's always a great thing to do, though. But the other thing about doing the show, a bit like your question, is you have to be so careful about, you have to be secret about so many things. And even with your kids, my kids are asking me stuff, and I'm like, I can't tell you, because I know one of them will tell their mates, and then the next thing it's on Twitter. So I have to be secretive with my friends. The other great show I was in was Doctor Who, and there was a whole rumor that I was going to be Doctor Who. And I had to keep that secret for about 9 months. My kids were going crazy with me. So you get used to keeping secrets as an actor. So wait and see, and it's in the next couple of weeks anyway.
Was there an aspect of the governor's character from the comic books you wish you would have made it into the show, like cutting off Rick Grimes' hand?
Yeah, I did like that scene. The one thing I did think that we did well was we walked a fine line between that governor and the governor in the TV. So like when he has those, he has the arena and he has the fighting in the arena at Woodbury. I thought we did really well because you thought, well, this is a good guy, and in the comic you know he's a bad guy. But I thought it was such a weird thing, and when he puts the Dixon brothers together, that's really out of the blue, and so it's quite strange, and you suddenly think, I don't like this guy. One of my favorite things is in the first episode, where you think, hey, this isn't the governor I know, this isn't the governor, and then at the end you see him sitting in his man cave, and he's looking at something, you think, is he watching TV? Do they have TV? What's going on? And then it cuts him with all these heads in the tank, and he's just watching it like he's watching the ball game or something. And I thought, that is brilliant. I want to play this guy, and then other things start to emerge about the fact that he's, you introduced me before about the sort of the politician thing. He is a politician, the other thing about him is his public face, that he's out there, he's smiling, he's shaking hands, he's sort of having his photograph taken with families and stuff. And his private face are completely different, he's scheming in the background. There's something very political about him in that way, and I like that.
You're pretty pleasant up here. This show you had to go to some pretty dark places.
Yeah.
Where do you find the inspiration for that?
Well, there's quite a lot of places to go. I mean, I think when you're playing the governor, I don't think you have to look too far in our world to see people who are in positions of leadership really sort of being quite sadistic. We can see that across our world. It's in our history and it's in our world right now. So, I think, and also, The Walking Dead, I started it, the whole show started before the pandemic. As you go through the pandemic, it gives it a whole different sort of spin on the show. The fact that something can come from nowhere and disrupt our lives. And many people have said to me, after the pandemic, they wish they'd been in Woodbury, that it was just an enclosed place, that nobody could come in or come out of. So, yeah, you do have resonance to it all the time, and you're trying to find those relevances a lot, really. So, but it's not hard to find people who are duplicitous in places of power. Hey, sir.
How you doing?
Good.
Since you play such a bad guy, have you ever stolen anything off the set? Like a prop or anything?
Well, I'm not going to admit that now. No, you get, the other thing about being on the show is you do get gifted stuff a lot. So I've got, a garage full of stuff like, I've got so many eye patches, it's unbelievable. But I've got stuff like, I've got a Catania, not the one that Michelle used, but I've got that. I've got things from my apartment that I had. I've got bits of my costume, the second coat I wore with the collar. I've got lots of different things. They made a few of those things, so by giving me one, it's like a duplicate rather than the real one. So I do have those things, but no, I didn't steal anything. Of course I didn't. I would never admit to that. Thanks for the question.
So your garage full of memorabilia, is it full of fish tanks full of heads?
Yeah, no, I don't have that. But I do have the season 3, the thing they made for the DVD, which is a small memorial thing of the head tank. I do have that. I have a few of those things. I have a lot of the merchandise. So I have loads of that stuff that I sign here and stuff. Yes, sir.
Hey, thanks for being here. You, as the governor, played a pretty big part in the end of Merle Dixon's character.
Yeah.
Did you have any input working with Michael and the writers on how he was gonna meet his end, and then also how was doing the choreographing with the fight with him with the one arm?
So yeah, we did. I mean, Mike had a lot of input. I mean, he had a real sort of, he knew what he wanted to do. He worked with the writers. Because it was his demise, he was able to sort of work on that. And I was able to come in and talk about what I needed to do. It was always in the script that I'd bite his fingers off. That was the thing we were worried about. But also I was really, thankful to Michael, because we were filming in an old barn. It was like in the middle of nowhere. It was like dusty and horrible. And Mike went in and said, I'm not doing it. I'm not filming in here because it's not clean. And he worked on a film about 3 or 4 years before he started The Walking Dead. And they'd done a fight in a very dusty old sort of warehouse or something. And the other actor had got stuff in his lungs. And it really affected him. And Mike said, I don't want to do this. So they had to industrially clean this place we were filming. And I wouldn't have thought of that. I would have just done it. So I was very thankful for him to do that. That scene took a long time. It has lots of elements in it. And then there's the scene afterwards, of course, with him and Daryl when he turns into the zombie and stuff. So the walker. I mean, it was very emotional. I loved working with Michael. I don't know if you've ever met him, but he's a great guy, brilliant actor. It always makes me laugh sometimes when people ask me to sign posters, and the whole cast have signed them, and Michael's signature is always like the size of this table. It's like he takes up the entire space, so you have to fit around him. But he's a great guy. I don't know if you've met him, but it was a great scene to do that. I mean, there was, that was the end of a big relationship between Merle and the governor. And it was a fight about who was going to survive, So it was a great thing to do. It's good.
Did you do a lot of your own stunt work and fights?
So it's interesting with that, because some actors, obviously it's famous that Tom Cruise does a lot of his own stunts. But the other thing about that is he is the producer, so he can sort of stop production, it's all on his dime. With us, time is very important, so if one of the actors suddenly turns his ankle or breaks his arm, that's everyone's out of work for the next month or so. So we take those things seriously. We have a great stunt team, they are the best. And they'll get to know you, they'll get to know what you're comfortable with, what you like to do. So fighting, we do a lot of fighting and stuff like that. But if you're suddenly falling off a building or if you're falling out of a car, then you're going to get the stunt team to do that, because there's nothing worse than an actor getting injured and everybody having to stop filming. That's a lot of money. If that happens, then that can be millions of dollars. So you have to be sensible as well as try your best to sort of make the illusion as best as it can be, Hey.
So when you're at
Yeah.
breakfast with Andrea and the show, and Andrea, you're with Milton, and he thinks that there's still something left of the walkers. Can you tell me why Andrea just totally forgets she was at the CDC?
Say that again, get a bit closer to the mic for me.
I said, can you tell me why Andrea just totally forgets she's at the CDC, knowing that they're not who they used to be? When Milton with
Yeah.
the guy, I forget his name.
That she just forgets?
Yeah, she's like, I don't think about it.
Yeah, I think she's so. I mean, that would be a question for.
I didn't know.
But I think she had to do this thing where she was in Woodbury. She'd been on the road for a long time. She'd lost her sister. She was in a very emotional place, and then she had this guy sort of presenting something to her that was safety. And I think she just got blinded around all that. Michonne knew it was wrong. I mean, how many of us haven't done things that we, particularly if you're in love with someone or you fancy them or you feel like there's another life here. Sometimes your rational self can go out the window, So I think and also for terms of the story, she had to have this thing where her and Michonne were pushed away from each other so that they could come back. So it was a tough decision that Laurie had to make there, I think. Andrea had to make. But that would be a question for her as well about what her motivation was around that one. But thank you.
What do you think would happen if the governor had crossed paths with Negan?
Well, Negan would go down, obviously. I mean, I think there's no argument. I think what was interesting, because I would really love to have put the two together, because I think what the governor would have done is played low status. He would have gone in there with Negan and he would have let Negan have high status, and he would scheme behind him. I think the governor is very good at that. We've seen it in season 4. He's very good at presenting a person to different people. And I think he would have presented a person to Negan as someone who was low status, happy for you to have the lead, I'll do whatever you want, and then he'll stab him in the back. I think that's the person he would have been. I think he is someone who can be a bit of an actor around other people. And I think he would have conned Negan into thinking that he was on his side and that he was the boss, and then he would have just taken him out, I think. I don't think the one thing you wouldn't think about the governor is that he has loyalty to anyone apart from himself. So that's why I would have thought he would have done.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Hello.
My question was kind of similar to his, but who do you think would win in a fight between the governor, Negan, and Alpha?
Yeah, I always think the governor's going to win. I mean, I'm always going to back the governor. Samantha Morton, who I know very well, she's great. Thought she played a great character. As I say though, I think I'd love to see some sort of origin thing between the governor and Negan. I've worked with Jeffrey. We did a show called Extant together with Halle Berry. He's such a, I don't know whether any of you have ever met him, but God, he's a great guy. He's the funniest guy I've ever met. And I know he's doing his season now with Melissa, so it's going to be, I'm looking forward to that. But maybe they can find a way of me bringing back the governor and Negan, and then I can kick his ass. Hey, man.
I wanted to ask, what was your relationship with the whole, like the cast and crew, like how that?
It was awesome. I mean, I've worked on many shows, and sometimes there's a sense that, some things people drop the ball, you're on set, you're waiting for stuff, you're not included in any of the creative side. That wasn't the truth on this. This was so well run. I mean, you only see what's going on in front of the camera. What's going on behind the camera is this major industry. I mean, we're down there in Sonoya, there's so many offices, there's so many construction building, there's so many stunts, there's the makeup department, there's the costume department, there's all the administrative side of doing a job like this. They are second to none. And the truth of that, the proof of that is when you go now, sometimes when I go back to Atlanta, I'll go down onto the set. The crew are exactly the same crew that started season 1. They've been there for 10, 11 years because they're treated well. It's a really good family place. They're looked after. Their families, like I said before, they do stupid hours. I mean, you do hours like you don't do anywhere else. You don't do them on other shows the way they do them on this, but they want to be there. So yeah, the relationship was great. And that's why I think people are sad to leave, because it's a brilliant working experience. There's nobody who leaves The Walking Dead thinking, I'm glad I'm out of here. Everybody wants to be on that show for as long as possible. And hence that's why they're doing the spin-offs again and again and again,
Yeah, and also, real quick, did any of you mess with each other on set, just to joke?
Yeah, we had a lot of that. I mean, there's lots of, you've just got to do that. You've got to have a laugh. Many a time that people would turn up and they'd be in the wrong costume or they'd be in the wrong scene or things like that. Daryl's a real, Norman is a real, he pulls your leg a lot. He does it. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I've never worked with him on The Walking Dead, but on the other thing I worked with him, he's such a great guy, very, very funny. He'll mess with lines and stuff like that. Michael Rooker, hilarious, So really, yeah, you've got to have fun. If you're going to go to work, you want to have fun, So we do have a lot of fun down there. It's hard work, but we make each other laugh as well.
With your accent, how long did it take to find the governor's voice, going from your natural British tone to Southern drawl?
Well, of course, Andrew had been there before me, so Andrew, he has a wonderful voice coach called Jessica Drake, and she would work with me, she'd work with Lenny, she'd work with Andrew, and a couple of the other guys. So we work really hard with them. She's like, we'll do tapes, we'll get the script. We just listen to stuff all the time. But the really great thing for me was we were filming in Georgia. So the accent I was doing, all the crew had that accent. So I would just hang out with them all the time. I've done accents sometimes in the wrong place. So you'll be doing like an American accent, but you're actually filming in Australia or you're doing like a Scottish accent and you're filming in Wales, you know, so it can play with your head. Whereas this one, the accent I was doing, the people I was working with had that accent. So we would hang out, we would play golf, we would go have meals. So the accent was around me all the time. And also, you know, sometimes with Jessica, she was somebody she was on it. So that was something else that we had to do, was just work all the time on that stuff. But after a while, it becomes second nature.
Theater, TV, movies. What do you prefer?
Well, I do it all. So the best thing is always a great script. You know, I mean, if you're in the theater or you're on TV or in film, if you've got a bad script, it's never going to be good. You know, it's not going to be a good experience. So it doesn't matter what the medium is. What you're looking for is a great script or a great character. And for me, I'm always looking for something different. You know, if I've played like with The Walking Dead, if I've played the governor, then I'm trying to play a different character after that. I'm always looking to do something different. I get bored really quickly. So, you know, I'm looking for things to challenge me. I'm looking for things to sort of, you know, to have some sort of excitement around. So it doesn't matter. I do like theater, but it can go on for a long time. You know, 6 months doing the same play, I can get very, very bored. So I like to mess it up. Hey, man.
Have you ever done any improvised lines? And if so, what is your favorite?
Yeah, I've done a lot of improvised stuff, yeah. On The Walking Dead, there was one scene which was brilliant. And it sounds odd, because it was improvised, which was when the governor traps Laurie in that sort of warehouse. And there was very little dialogue. And I just started whistling, because there was a real echo in this, and I just started whistling this crazy tune, and actually it was really weird and eerie. And then I found this shovel and I just started scraping it along the floor, and all the crew were like, oh man! So the different sounds, so I brought a lot to that episode, but you know, the writers on The Walking Dead are so great that there's not a lot of improvisation around it. They'll listen to you, but they're really writing it. But there's other shows I've done where there's a lot of improvisation. But that was the one for me, and it wasn't so much dialogue, it was this whistling and this sort of the sound around it. That was the great thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was it, yeah. They should put that on the album. Yeah.
What's one role or project you lost out on that you wish you would have had?
It's a hard one, that, because there's been a few things which I thought, wow, you know, gone up for things and it's not happened. But I try as much as I can to live in the present. You know, if I'm thinking about things that haven't happened in the past, then I'm wasting today, really. So there have been a couple of films and TV things which I've gone up for. I think every actor in Britain was up for Game of Thrones and Harry Potter, and I wasn't in either of them. I remember going to see Harry Potter with my youngest son, and halfway through he turned to me and went, why aren't you in this? You know, so there's those things, but my life has taken the course it's taken, and I'm really happy with that, certainly, you know, both professionally and privately. So yeah, I don't dwell on the things I haven't got. I'm so grateful to have got the things I have, really. Hey.
Hi. Got here a little late, so I don't know if you answered this already, but I was just wondering about your earliest roles acting, like in school or as a teenager or anything.
Yeah, no, I started in school. I started in junior school, which is like from 5 till 11. And I really enjoyed it. And then when I went to the secondary school, which was the higher education, they didn't do any drama. So then I went to my local theater and I knocked on the door and they let me in, and I started working for them. But I did a big role when I was about 16 called One Summer, and that was really a big show in the UK, and I didn't look back from then on. I went to drama school. I wanted to be a classical actor, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in Shakespeare, I wanted to work in theatre, and I did that for quite a long time. I did that for about 10 years, and then when I came out I started doing television and film. But yeah, One Summer would be the one that really got me going. That was the one that people started to recognise me. And particularly it was set in my hometown of Liverpool in the UK. And I suddenly couldn't walk down the street, and that was a really strange feeling, you know, but a really good one because it had gone really well.
So you said that in the secondary school system there was no theater. Have you thought about any way to try and inspire interest and say how?
Yeah, I go to a lot of schools now in the UK, and I do a lot of talks about how to be an actor and stuff like that. I have a podcast called Who Am I This Time, which is where I talk to actors about one role. And all the actors I speak to, you know, I speak to like Brian Cox and who else have I spoken to? I'm speaking to David Tennant next week, you know. They all say, you know, how they started out. They thought that acting wasn't for them. They thought that acting was for other people, and they had no idea how to get into acting. So I always say to people in schools, you know, it is for you. You can do it. You don't have to have a university education. You don't have to have gone to Oxford or Cambridge. You know, you don't have to come from a moneyed family. It's for everyone. It's a meritocracy. You know, if you're good, and you work hard, there's a good chance you'll start working.
A lot of the schools here seem to be cutting out arts funding altogether.
Same in the UK. Yeah, arts funding is right down now, particularly because we're going into what's predicted to be a 10-year recession. And I always think that the arts is something that always goes. But, you know, I think people watch television more. And particularly in the pandemic, you know, people started just staying at home and watching TV. And, you know, you see where the creative people, you know, that's what you're doing. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What did you say the name of your podcast was?
It's called Who Am I This Time? So you can find that on Spotify. And yeah, I talked to people like David Warner just before he died. I talked to him about The Omen. That's a really great one. I talked to Jonathan Pryce recently about Brazil, Brian Cox about Succession. David Tennant, I'm going to be talking to him recently. So yeah, there's a lot of great people I've had on the podcast, so check it out. Charles Dance I spoke to as well, so really great people.
You've done performing before and after the pandemic. What were some of the challenges you faced, if you had any works going on during it?
Yeah, the real challenge when we came back was just not being able to sit and hang out with the crew and the other actors. That you had to keep distance all the time. Also, everybody being in masks meant that you couldn't see if anybody was smiling or saying hello to you, and that felt quite weird. But also, everything started to take so long, you know, in a day. A typical day filming, you would do maybe 8 minutes of screen time, and after the pandemic, we were doing 2 or 3 minutes of screen time. So everything just slowed down, everything became more expensive. But, you know, we were doing the thing I loved, so it was okay. I wasn't having to home educate my children in a small apartment, so I felt very lucky to be doing it, you know, in the first place. And the UK now, I don't know what it's like here, obviously everybody's out. It's starting to get back to normal, but we're paying the cost, and the cost is the cost of living crisis. And also with the war in Ukraine, it means that our gas and oil, you know, we're not getting what we used to get, so it's pretty hard.
What was the biggest lesson you learned, or the best advice you ever got about maybe a role or a project that didn't go as well as you thought it would?
Yeah, if you're going to be an actor, you've got to deal with rejection. You know, an actor will be told you're not the right person for the job, maybe 4 or 5 times a week, you know. So if you don't like rejection, don't be an actor, you're gonna get rejected. But my favorite advice for any actor is don't be late, and it's not fair. The thing is, acting isn't fair, it just isn't. You know, great actors never work, really bad actors work all the time. But you know, it just isn't fair. You don't get that job you wanna get. You know, people are nasty to you, people say awful things about you. You've just gotta get over it. You've gotta pick yourself up on a regular basis and get back in the workplace. It just is. You know, you see us at our best because you see us on the screen, but you don't see the years that go in behind that, and the insecurity. Most actors are really insecure, and they're very, you know, they're sort of their job is insecure. So you've got to be able to deal with that, I think, most of the time.
What upcoming projects do you have that you can discuss?
So I've just done a thing in the UK called The Long Shadow, which is all about a real serial killer that was operating in the UK in the 80s, called the Yorkshire Ripper. And I've just done a thing that just came out in the UK called Sherwood, which again is a crime drama about a mining community, about a murder that happens in a mining community. and I think that's on here at the moment or about to come out. So they're the two things I've just done. And I did a horror film called Dampier, where I play a vampire. And I'd always wanted to play a vampire, and it didn't let me down. It was great. We did it in Romania. I did it right by Ivan the Terrible's castle. We did the whole thing, so that was great. I had real great fun on that. So check that out. That should be coming out soon as well.
Anybody have any more questions for David before we put a bow on it? All right,
Great being here, everybody. Thanks very much, and I'll see you soon.
I've got one. I've been bugging the promoter of the show to bring you in since season 3.
Right.
So this is like big for me. Can you give us a kill 'em all in the governor's voice before you leave?
Kill 'em all. That's it. And my other one I love is liar. Thanks very much. I'll see you all.
Guys, thank you for coming out. That wraps up the Q&A panels for the weekend. Enjoy the rest of the show. Stop by the autograph room, support the vendors, get home safely. Monster Mania returns next March. Dates for 4 of the 5 shows have been announced in the programs. The hotels are taking reservations, so